On the episode today, we have guest Caitlin MacLeod-Bluver. Caitlin MacLeod-Bluver is the 2025 Vermont Teacher of the Year. She teaches 10th grade American Literature and 10 through 12 grade History and Civics at Winooski High School in Winooski, Vermont. She teaches students to read critically, write bravely, and find their voice, and aims to empower students to advocate for justice in their world. In addition to classroom teaching, Caitlin is also a certified reading specialist and instructional coach, and was a part-time lecturer at the University of Vermont. Get ready for a great episode.
I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-creating curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Caitlin, welcome to the Time for Teachership podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I am really intrigued by a lot of different things that you bring to the table as an educator and coach. And one of the reasons we reconnected is around your NCSS presentation on literacy as liberation and thinking about like the social studies context and literacy. And I was really intrigued by that, but I also know that you have a wealth of knowledge and information and like passions and all the things. So what's kind of on your mind today, or what do you want audience members to be thinking of today?
Well, I am still in the classroom full time in addition to many other things, and classroom spaces are hard right now. We're talking at the end of December. Last night we did another huge food distribution to our students who are really hungry. So I was just right before this call cleaning up from that. I'm heavily supporting a second grader of ours who was detained by ICE over the Thanksgiving break. So I was emailing back and forth with that. And then we have a huge Somali population at our school in Winooski. It's a refugee resettlement city. And after Trump's remarks calling the Somali people, quote, garbage, we've done a lot of support for our Somali population, which has been hard in some ways. Like we've been very targeted and attacked. So even just now, like I was in the hallway and just continuing talking to kids about how they are processing everything. And December is dark and it's, going into break. It's a hard time for kids anyway. So there's a lot on my mind right now.
Thank you for naming all of the things, because I feel like things are constantly evolving and changing. So yes, we are talking December 2025. And whenever folks are engaging with this episode, at whatever point, like hopefully things will be different from the better, but it's a good reminder that this is where we are right now. And these are all the things that are affecting not just educators, but students as well and families. So thank you for just like situating us in that. And I think connected to that, but maybe like a positive spin off of like what is possible. I always try to lead with the question around Dr. Bettina Love's quote on freedom dreaming. So dreams grounded in the critique of injustice, like we know all of this stuff is happening and we know there is a better possible future. So what does that future look like for you?
Yeah, I love Dr. Bettina Love's work. And I think what I hold on to and one of my North Stars is that the world is hard and it's full of injustice. And I want kids to know that they can make it better, that their voices matter, and that they can change the world. And I want them angry by what they see, but I want them knowing that they will play a role in dreaming us a better world. And then specifically, like as an English and as a social studies teacher, we play a big role in then helping them get the skills they need to do that. So making sure that they're really strong readers, making sure they have a strong awareness of their past, our nation's past, so that they can understand why we are where we are today. Making them become brave writers that can cite evidence and use good sources and make sense of misinformation, and then to communicate their ideas strongly. So even though things are hard at the end of December, that's why I can't get away from the classroom, because there's so much hope for me in my four walls when I'm working with kids that I get to be the one that helps them make sense of what's happening and do something about it.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I love that you're already getting into like all of the specific skills and things that we have the power to like amplify in our kids who like many of them have these skills, right? And our job is just like coach them and and improve them, and find ways that they can use those skills in real world like settings. I love that. And I'm also thinking about, the teachers. I think most people who are listening to this podcast or engaging with this podcast are people who know justice is important and they know that this is what they want to do. And I think for some, it might be like, I'm not quite sure how to bring this about, or I'm not quite sure how I do this. And I, do X, Y, and Z that my administrator requires. Or for an administrator listening, and engaging, it's like whatever they have right on their shoulders that is coming from above. Like we were talking about like languaging, right? Here are the terms you can't use, or here's like the state law on this. And so I'm imagining there's a lot of like mindset stuff going on for people. Are there any powerful like shifts in mindset or kind of like big ideas that have helped you or helped propel others that towards doing some of this work amidst all the things going on?
Yeah, I think what comes to my mind first is I don't know how we do the work of being a social studies teacher or being a classroom teacher if we don't address everything that our kids are bringing with them into the classroom, if we don't make space for what's going on in the world. I had a student say to me recently when we were kind of talking about how do teachers respond to what's going on, what feels good for you. And I'm a teacher that's like always talking about it with the world and being relevant. And she said something powerful, which was that when her teachers don't talk about it, she assumes that they agree with everything that's going on. And I know that that's not the intent of the teachers, but it was a moment for me of recognizing the silence carries so much meaning for our kids. And this was just one kid. I'm like, oh, do other people think that about this teacher and this teacher? So for me, kind of like two mindset shifts is like, number one, yes, this work is hard, and I don't know any other way. Like kids have to feel like they belong in your classroom to do any learning. And it seems like often a talking point from the right wing of like, oh, just teach reading or just teach math. And it's like, we can't just do that if kids don't feel safe, if they don't feel seen, affirmed, valued, etc. And then I also think there's a big shift in terms of like really valuing what our kids are bringing into the classroom, and not just like lip service of like, oh yeah, languages are our strength, but really like showing that in your classroom. And I think a lot about honoring our kids as geniuses and like really this mindset shift of like they are a genius and it's my job to bring that genius out of them. And how do I do that? How do I facilitate a learning space, a classroom space? How do my instructional decisions align with this underlying principle that like, I am so lucky to be with 20 geniuses today. How do I get that out of them? We read this book in one of my English classes, The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, and a character says to another character, the world's been waiting for your genius a long time. And I printed it out on my classroom. And like when we read it, I look at kids, I'm like, have teachers said that to you? Like, do you feel that? And sadly, the answer is no often, but like that is something that I try to hold on to as much as possible.
Oh my gosh, there's so much there. I mean, I just fiercely writing notes about like, the valuing of things beyond just like naming them, but like truly valuing the idea of genius. I mean, you're like bringing in Goldie Muhammad here. Like, I love all of this. And I can literally think of colleagues as well as my own teachers as a student who did not talk about what is happening in the political landscape, the politics, the current events, whatever. And totally that's what happens is everyone thinks like, oh, well, then you must be just fine with it, which in populations where our students are marginalized in various ways and identities and groups that they belong to, it's like, oh, so you don't value me, right? And how, to your earlier point, like how can we engage with students, partner with students and families if we are not specifically addressing it and saying we're against all of the oppression that's happening. So I just really love that all of this is like threading together what you're saying. And I also love your segue into how, right? So you left off kind of saying like, how do I do this? I'm curious, like, what does the how look like? That's a huge question, but I know there's like different components that you think about. I mean, you talked about literacy as liberation. You talked about like elevating the genius and like setting up classrooms in specific ways, elevating student agency. Like there's so many components. I don't know if you want to like pick one or just kind of share a smattering of ideas, whatever works for you.
Yeah. My presentation around literacy is liberation. I was like trying to distill a little bit of like, what am I doing in my history classrooms, in my civics classrooms that is working? And I think a lot around, um, well, even backing up, I think a lot around the need for kids to be strong readers and strong writers when they graduate high school. I think so much of my students who have graduated high school and sadly have not graduated college within 4 years or 6 years, and life gets busy, and they're often coming from families that are in poverty, and it's complicated. But I think about how can we better prepare them with these real concrete skills to then live, our freedom dreams. I think a lot about how do you first create belonging in your classroom, and it's not like a switch that you can flip and you have it one day and you don't have it the other day. It's this ongoing reflective process of all the stuff that I'm sure your listeners are aware of, like diverse texts and really leaning into checking in with kids. This is one thing I've been talking about a lot recently is during COVID, I feel like we did a great job of like really slowing down and just like asking kids, how are you? Do you have enough food? What's going on? But we're past COVID now and it's back to normal. And it's like we lost something there. And I intentionally, especially since the new administration, have been really slowing down and trying to check in with kids. Like, are we okay? And it's really through that listening that we learn about our kids. And there's that mindset shift again of like, I am not the expert. Like, you are bringing so much into my classroom. How can I learn from you? And I think kids see me as that type of teacher, I think, hopefully, that really listens. And then like, my doors like never close. They just keep coming in and keep talking. And like, you keep learning more stuff about them. And then it's like the books we're using and this is why I love teaching also. It's like every decision carries so much weight. All of our curriculum decisions, the texts we're using, what we're teaching, what we're not teaching, what we're emphasizing, all of that, it's like, it's messy and we show up in really small ways for kids, but then also showing up in bigger ways. Like our school raised the Somali flag after Trump's comment. So we show up in these big ways, or we have this big food distribution things. But I think kids see belonging over the course of, the year or many months. So that's the first thing. Kids got to feel like they belong. And then I have a whole lot been thinking a lot around what does this mean from a literacy perspective? And I think a lot of the science of reading research is fantastic, of course. And like most states now have adopted science of reading legislation. Most of the legislation is focused around K-3. And that makes sense of like addressing the root of the problem. And I think about our high school kids that are kind of left behind from some of that research and what that means. And I started as a U.S. history teacher in Boston, and I was trained as a history teacher. And I did not know what to do with struggling readers. Like that was not where our pedagogy was. And, through many years and different jobs and stuff, I went back to school to become a reading specialist just because I felt like I needed more skills of like, what do we actually do as content teachers when we have kids that don't know how to read? And I'm really enthused and, hopeful because their research is like pretty obvious and we know what to do. Kids will only understand a text if they have strong background knowledge about it and if they have vocabulary about it. And it's kind of like one thing. And then second, they need to read a lot and they need to read rigorous texts and they need to read a lot of them. So kind of those like four things of like belonging first, a lot around vocabulary, a lot around building background knowledge and what that means, and then like the actual reading strategies and what that looks like. But I'm left hopeful of like the research supports that as social studies teachers, there's so much we can do to support kids being successful readers and writers and then into their future.
Hi, this is Leah popping in to share the free resource for this episode. Literacy is Liberation, Strategies for Supporting Struggling Readers and Work Towards Justice. You can find it at the blog post for this episode, www.lindsaybethlyons.com/blog/255. Now back to the show.
Oh my gosh, yes. I love that belonging is central, and because you can't really do anything without that, right? And then I do love bringing in like the science of reading stuff. I know that so many, I mean, you just named three incredibly important things from the research and equally three challenging things I think that teachers ask as a coach. They ask me or say like, if this is my biggest struggle, like these are the most, particularly background and reading a lot. Like how do I get kids to consistently read, and how do I get kids, if they have no knowledge of a particular group of people we're studying, and I'm like, okay, we're going to start this inquiry lesson where you're going to ask questions, and they're like, well, I don't even know who we're talking about, right? Like these are two challenging pieces. And I'll just say what I've been thinking about, and then I would love some of your thoughts, because I've been reading Zaretta Hammond's latest work around like building students' capacity to learn and thinking about how information is processed and how we support students to use tools to like do it beyond like the teacher always being there. And so one thing I'm thinking about is the engagement of students with any sort of text, and how if we could make it more meaningful to them, like they're going to be motivated to read more. And so that's something I've been like just interested about, like that motivational aspect, as well as like the literacy skills themselves. I feel like there's something there. But then also like the background knowledge piece, to me, my move, and tell me if there's like other ways, because I would love other ways. My move lately has been to think about like frameworks like funds of knowledge or cultural capital from Yoso, like thinking about what are the background knowledge things that you might already know that might not be like this period in time or this particular geographic area we're studying in history or this person, but there's some sort of like, oh, we're talking about migration. Okay, well, I have a personal experience with migration, right? There's like things that we can pull on that we don't always think about in the classroom that could be leveraged. But tell me what you think about these. Like, what do you do with these pieces?
Oh, I love that, because so many times it's like, oh, kids don't have background knowledge, so I have to give it to them. And I do see some role in that, but it's like, no, how are we honoring what they do know already? And learning, reading, it's Velcro. It has to stick to something. So figuring out what it's sticking to first. So it won't work if we're only front loading, like, here's a video and here's some pictures. Like, now you have background knowledge. We have to connect it to something that they already know of to begin with. And then I do think there is a role in like, we're going to like use a video as a text before we actually read the text, so that you have like, we're having a shared common experience before we dive into it, and like a starting place at least, or, you know, showing pictures or reading a small short text before we read the bigger text, and thinking about how we're leveraging like text sets and what our core text is, like what we're trying, how we're using reading in itself to build that knowledge. But kids have knowledge. They're bringing knowledge into our classrooms, and they will be more motivated to do the work if you're honoring what they already know, rather than treating them like they're stupid and they don't know anything in the first place. And I haven't read Zaretta Hammond's new stuff yet, but I want to. And I've been doing, we had a really nice professional learning session recently with Trevor Reagan from the Learning Lab, really thinking about growth mindset plus, and really honoring that learning is hard for kids. And I have a 5-year-old who's also doing a lot of learning right now, and learning's really hard. And I hear him sometimes saying this, like, I give up, I can't do this language. And the research is really clear. It's like, you need to honor that it is hard, and not just say like, no, it's okay, like you can do it. Like, no, this is really hard. Like, I get it. And it's a skill, and you can get better at something or worse. And then especially in high school, kids don't want to do hard things. Like, their life is hard enough already. And at NCSS, I was like, how many teachers have kids that like immediately go to the bathroom when you pass out a reading? And it's like, it's everyone. They don't want to look stupid in front of their peers. So how we can build our culture in our classrooms, in our schools, we're like, no, it is hard, and we're going to do something hard together. And I got you. And like, not dumbing down the text, not making it easier. I started teaching in 2011, I think. And there was a lot of like scaffolding text, making it easy, the news ELA stuff of like, oh, I'm just going to change sentences. Like, now my kids can read it. And the pendulum has really shifted. It's like, no, kids need to be reading rigorous text. So how are we then scaffolding the challenge so that they can read the text, but they're the ones doing it? Because we know they're not going to get better at reading if we don't ever give them a chance to read in the first place.
Oh my gosh. Yes. For naming the pendulum swing, for sure. I mean, 2011 is when I think that was my first year of teaching. And it was like, here are all these apps that will make it easier. So just use these, right? And now it's like, okay, that didn't help. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love the idea of honoring the hard. I also have a almost 4-year-old, and so it is like, right, we need to we can do hard things it right now. Like that's we're in it together. And I just really appreciate that this analogy of Velcro and it's going to stick to something. What does it stick to? Like that really resonates because I think sometimes we think that there is literally nothing. There's right. It's the very much like the banking model. It's very much kids don't have anything coming in. No, it's sticking to something. And if it's not sticking to something, it's because we're maybe not facilitating the recognition that it's sticking to something. And it's just a kind of a lack of us being it's sticking. And so I am curious in all of this. I mean, in literacy challenges, in talking about all the hard history that we have to teach, what is maybe a large challenge that you faced as a history teacher, and what's a way that you've kind of gotten through it, thought about a different avenue into it? What advice could we give to social studies educators who might be facing this big challenge that you've noticed yourself as a teacher or that you've noticed in other teachers?
I think one challenge is we love our content as social studies teacher. We want to teach all of it. And the older I get, the more I learn. I'm oh my God, I never learned this one random thing that happened. I was we have to do this. This is amazing. And so for me, it's taking things out because we know if reading is hard, we got to give them the space to process it on their own. And I know that sometimes when I'm short on time and I'm oh my God, I really want to finish this unit before winter break, I'll just read it for them. I'll just do this for them. And we start doing more of the work for kids because we love our content. We think it's important for them to know. And I'm not saying there's never a place for that, which is what I love about teaching is just being reflective and intentional about all your decisions. And I might make that choice tomorrow, Lindsay, but I'm doing it with a reason. And I know in January, we're not doing that, it's certain things, but I think really honoring and giving space to do this work of reading, of making sense, of, figuring out what their genius is. If I'm giving them a text and I'm telling them what it means, that's still banking model. I'm still owning the meaning of that text and really creating space of I've read this text 5,000 times, but I'm reading it again with you and you're bringing a whole new perspective into it. But it does take time. And even I know how important vocabulary instruction is and how important recognizing morphology, prefixes, suffixes, and roots and words is. And when you have diverse classes of learners, when you have so much at play in any given class period, sometimes it's easy to not do some of the things that are good because you want to get to your end goal. So I keep telling myself a little bit to really just slow down and honoring kids for giving them the time and space to do things.
Oh my gosh. Again, this is exactly what all the challenges are. It's pacing is number one. I literally have a Post-it note that says slow, right by my, because it's always right. We can do less is more, slow it down. Yes.
And it's hard too. I had a student teacher a couple years ago that decided she didn't want to be a teacher. And I'm so happy she made that decision. But one thing she said to me was I just had no idea how hard this work actually is. And I think just honoring that it really is so hard to do this well takes so much planning time. And across the nation, teachers' planning time is being cut left and right. And to teach one lesson with one strong primary source, let alone a whole DBQ or background text, it takes a lot of intentional planning to do it. And when that's cut short, it's easy to fall into bad habits or just trying to push through to get to certain content, et cetera.
That's such a good point too for leaders who are engaging with the episode. I think how much time we can give teachers is so critical. If there is anything we can do to increase planning or preparation time for lessons, your comments today have just been such a good illustration that teachers know what is good practice, and they usually are yeah, I have all these things in my head as I'm planning, and I have the realities of the situation to work within. And so if we can just support that structurally in any way,
fewer meetings, more planning time, please.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. And so I'm going to move us to kind of our close soon, but I am feeling like I wish I was a student in your classroom. And so I am just curious if there is a favorite lesson you've had recently or a favorite moment where like a student had this aha or like made you think differently. Like, is there any sort of kind of like moment that in the moments of hard that you attach to and are like, oh, but this was great.
Why I love teaching is there's a million moments like that, but this is the one that just happened a half hour ago. But I was kind of complaining to a colleague. I'm like, I'm trying to have this rigor. Like, I want the essay due, like, and kids just aren't doing it. And we're like, oh, it's a hard time of year. It's December. Like, and I was like, I know, I'm just kind of setting myself up. Like, I wanted to do revision circles, but they don't have a solid draft yet. So I think I just have to give them more work time. And then this kid came to me in her study hall. She's like, Miss Caitlin, will you look at my essay? And Lindsay, it was so good. I mean, it was amazing. And we're a small school, so I've been working with her in various classes for 3 years. And to see the growth in her writing was so powerful. And she's writing, it's for the Bernie Sanders State of the Union essay contest that our Senator Bernie Sanders does. So they choose an issue that they think is the most pressing issue in the country and describe the challenge and come up with their solution. And like she's talking about ICE detaining American citizens, and she has a strong solution. So it was like all of this is coming together, and like, there'll be plenty of kids that don't have their first drafts done this afternoon, and we'll deal with that also. But meeting with her for a half hour and looking at her essay with her was really powerful, and it was a nice moment.
Oh my gosh, I love that for so many reasons. I mean, the student agency, the like excitement that she's seeking out feedback, like outside.
I know.
Incredible. And also just this idea of a growth trajectory. I mean, a lot of people can't, for structural reasons, like they don't see the same students over and over, but many do. I mean, when I worked in a small school, like you absolutely do. Some teachers even have looping. Like they're even in one school year or one course, however long it is for you, like the growth is part of the joy, I think. And sometimes in the pacing stresses and all of that, we kind of forget about like the growth and the student joy. And I just love that story encapsulated that. So it's just like a nugget of a reminder for everyone to engage with that joy, engage with that growth, and seek it out if it's not already seeking you out. Beautiful. Thank you. And I think as we're closing, just kind of a few quick questions. One being like, we talked about a lot of big ideas, and I'm curious if there's one thing that's like a implementable today or tomorrow kind of thing where when they end the episode, they can go ahead and just do something to get started in one of these. So it might be like, I'm going to do this in the lesson tomorrow. It might be something a leader could do. It might be something where you've like kind of painted this big picture and like what's one step forward.
Yeah, for teachers, I was just reminded of this in my Block 1 English class today of just highlighting tier 2 words, these words that show up in text all the time that you have to know in order to make sense of the text. So we were reading an article about how technology lowers students' emotional intelligence. And there was a lot of words that were synonyms for the word lowers. So diminishes, undermines, weakens. And just like I was doing so much with my hands just to help kids like verbalize, like it's going down, it's going down. And just pay attention to those types of words in your text and how, if you didn't know what that word meant, how you wouldn't understand the text to begin with. And then any administrators listening, I just think having conversations with your teachers and like the same way we try to honor the genius in our students, honoring the genius in us as teachers. So not coming in like, oh, like I heard about this new way to teach vocabulary, but like, what are you already doing to teach vocabulary? What does teaching tier 2 words already look like in your classroom? Tell me about a moment of reading, whatever it is, but just like honoring all the good work that's already happening in classrooms around literacy instruction, I think is important.
I love that. I'm envisioning leaders putting up a little post-it that's like, what are you already doing? ...
That would be a win.
That would be great. Okay, this one is just for fun. What is something that you have been learning about lately? It could be education related, but it could also be anything.
Okay, I thought of 2 things. One of my students for this essay she's writing in civics class around the biggest problems in our world is writing about moratoriums on building data centers for AI use. So I've done like a deep dive around the climate and global warming impacts and environmental impacts of AI data centers. And we have some state legislation in Vermont for next session. It looks like our senator is proposing some national stuff too, and just like what this means. And like, I'm kind of just like on the sidelines of this, but this student's topic, I was like, I got to learn more about this with you. What's going on? And then I'm also in my English classes reading a ton of science fiction right now, and it's just been really fun. It's not what I would ever read for on my own, but what a way, like if we want kids talking about their world and like having classes where we're using literature and using history to understand our current context, just a huge plug for science fiction reading in classes.
Oh my God, I am such a science fiction nerd that yes, like I totally love that you named that, because every time I read, I'm like, this is a blend of the things I teach. Like this is a blend of like the ELA and the freedom dreaming of like, often it's dystopian, but like also it's what is possible and how do we tinker with that, as well as like grounded in the past. Oh my gosh, yes, love it.
It's so fun. And then because I have this joint role where I'm English teacher and history teacher, like we read this story just now in my English class where I was like, oh my God, we actually got to read this in my history class too, because the connections that we can make are so strong.
I feel like we should do a sci-fi episode down the road. We'll do
down.
And then finally, I mean, you do so much. I mean, you just presented at NCSS. Like, where can people connect with you or learn more about you?
I don't have a huge online presence, but I have my Instagram at 2025 VT Teacher of the Year.
That's right. And huge celebration for being Vermont's teacher.
Thank you. I know the year's almost done, so it's coming to a close.
Oh my gosh, Caitlin, this was so fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Lindsay.
If you like this episode, I bet you'll be just as jazzed as I am about my coaching program for increasing student-led discussions in your school. Shane Safir and Jamila Dugan talk about a pedagogy of student voice in their book, Street Data. They say students should be talking for 75% of class time. Do students in your school talk for 75% of each class period? I would love for you to walk into any classroom in your community and see this in action. If you're smiling to yourself as you listen right now, grab 20 minutes on my calendar to brainstorm how I can help you make this big dream a reality. I'll help you build a comprehensive plan, from full-day trainings and discussion protocols like Circle and Socratic Seminar to follow-up classroom visits where I can plan, witness, and debrief discussion-based lessons with your teachers. Sign up for a nerdy, no-strings-attached brainstorm call at lindsaybethlyons.com/contact. Until next time, leaders, think big, act brave, and be your best self.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.